The day is bright and full of joy. Hey guys, what's up? And today I'm gonna do a review on the good old Game of Thrones Season 3, also known as A Storm of Swords Part 1, according to the books. Beware of spoilers from Season 1 and 2. Last two seasons, Robb Stark was on his way to fight the Lannisters. He sent Theon to Balon to get ships, but instead Theon betrayed Robb and took over Winterfell. Meanwhile, Asha, Hodor, Bran, and Rickon escaped Winterfell. Then we also have Arya Stark, who's with Yoren last season, but Yoren wasn't here anymore, so she's with Tywin Lannister. But under the help of the Faceless Man, she escaped, but she's still somewhere in the Riverlands. Back in King's Landing, Tyrion Lannister was replaced by Tywin Lannister as the Hand of the King. After a war with Stannis Baratheon, Stannis lost and retreated, while Joffrey decided to not like Sansa anymore, but instead marry Margaery. Beyond the Wall, Jon Snow, as a ranger of the Night's Watch, gained the wildlings' trust, and now he's taken to Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall. Daenerys Targaryen, after leaving Vaes Dothrak, on the way to cross the Narrow Sea, she settled at Qarth, but Qarth was full of bad guys, but Daenerys won anyways. So the first episode is Valar Dohaeris, which responds to the previous episode, Season 2 finale, Valar Morghulis. I thought it means all men must born, but actually it means all men must serve. So this episode, the characters continue to have their separate ways to achieve their desires. It has a badass teaser, not gonna lie. A teaser is really rare for Game of Thrones. Usually after the HBO intro, the title sequence plays, but this episode, has a teaser. Jon Snow arrived at the Free Folk camp, met Mance Rayder, and then Margaery Tyrell, she's such an optimistic, kind, pretty lady. She did some charity work, which I think the royal people have never done. Pretty cool. And then Daenerys arrived in Astapor. A new location, you can see it in the title sequence. Astapor is another weird place full of crazy people, like the Master of the Unsullied. Unsullied is an army who is absolutely obedient to their masters. Meanwhile, Davos Seaworth went back to Dragonstone, and Melisandre and Stannis was not happy. But still, there's a couple of plot lines that wasn't mentioned on this episode. There's one on Theon Greyjoy, where the people was taking him, what would happen to him, and Hodor, Bran, and Rickon, what would they do? The plotline I really wanted to learn more about is what would Arya do, where would she go after she escaped. So far, it's a pretty decent episode, a new change of pace in King's Landing, new locations such as the Free Folk camp and Astapor. Then the story went on to episode 2, Dark Wings, Dark Words. Somehow I feel like this episode and the last one would make a good two-parted season premiere episode. Because this episode mainly focuses on plot lines that aren't mentioned last time. Bran, Hodor, Asha, and Rickon was still escaping. Arya, Hot Pie, and Gendry was going to places. Brienne holding Jaime captive, and where the hell is Theon? I still don't know. There are also a couple of interesting things in King's Landing. It's cool to see Margaery Tyrell and Sansa interacting. I imagine Natalie Dormer and Sophie Turner always hang out offset. And some hard, honest truths from Sansa. Still, we aren't really sure what Margaery's motives are, because she's acting so strangely. The Hound met Arya again, in the wild. Hell yes. Theon woke up in a weird place and got tortured. Ow. Brienne and Jaime really had chemistry, surprisingly. And they had a really nice ending scene. This episode also introduced a hell lot of new characters, like Jojen Reed, Thoros of Myr, and a couple of Boltons, and a new concept of warging, which is pretty interesting. Although it's a bit boring, it still works out pretty well. Then it's episode 3, The Walk of Punishment. This is where the show starts to value King's Landing less and start focusing on the Riverlands. This time, Tywin gave Tyrion a duty. Brienne and Jaime went with Locke, not to be confused with John Locke from Lost. Then there's also Mance Rayder, preparing to fight with the Night's Watch. I really love characters that are really badass and brave, but also has a kind and lovely side, like Arya and Daenerys. And it's really cute that Hot Pie made a bread with the shape of the wolf, and Arya turned and said, "Hey Hot Pie, it's really good." Finally something happy happens on Game of Thrones. And I know a lot of people hate Ramsay Snow, but in this episode he seemed like a nice guy. The ending was shocking. As you know, I always accidentally read or see spoilers, but not this time, and it ends abruptly with a scream and then rolls the end credits with such a funny song. What a surprising ending. Moving on to episode 4, and now his watch is ended. It's basically the best episode of the season so far, and it also promises us for more entertainment. So first of all, Jaime Lannister. I actually really like his character, and I kind of sympathize for him and what happened to him. The wedding of Margaery Tyrell and Joffrey was coming, and it was a big thing. And I'm really glad that Margaery could actually handle Joffrey and even manipulate him. It's brilliant. Another trial by combat was coming. This time was the Hound versus Beric Dondarrion. I'm looking forward to that. While, since Craster hadn't treated the Night's Watch that nicely, things happened. I'm actually really happy, because this time I could really enjoy the surprise without any spoilers spoiling the story on me at all. So I'm really satisfied with this episode. And the last scene was epic. Daenerys Targaryen had a way of her own to own the entire Unsullied army, and it was shocking. Although I already knew that's gonna happen, because, again, spoilers, but it's still very shocking to watch. This episode really surprises me, and it's really entertaining. More crazy stories and character changes and development. Then the story went on to episode 5, Kissed by Fire. We finally see more of Davos and Jaime. We all learn about a couple of more characters, like Shireen Baratheon and Grey Worm. The actress of Olenna Tyrell, Deanna Rake, did an amazing job at being this grumpy, witty, brutally honest woman. Tywin apparently prioritizes his family over royalty, because he's Cersei and Tyrion's father. He still ordered them to do things, while on Stannis' side, his wife was like, "You're the king, you don't need my permission. Even if you had sex with another woman, I don't care, you're the king." And in this episode, we also see the tension building up between the Lannisters and the Tyrells. And if the tension and the suspense is high enough, this season may be greater than we think. Then it's episode 6, The Climb. A little downfall and drama, but still has a lot of emotions like dread and shock to it. More of those characters from different places meeting each other scenes. Yes, I love those scenes. And I just really appreciate how there are many different places, but somehow they related to each other and built the plot to perfection. Like Jojen Reed seeing Jon Snow. It just had to happen to make Jon Snow plotline feel less irrelevant. And the torture scene was gruesome. Iwan Rheon really did a good job acting Ramsay Snow. And the ending monologue, the next memorable quote of Peter Baelish, "Chaos is a ladder," was epic. Mixing into the scene where Ygritte and Jon Snow reach the top of the wall was beautiful. Although all the talking and marriage thing makes it a bit less dramatic from the previous episode, it's still really nice. Next is episode 7, The Bear and the Maiden Fair, a transitional episode with new characters introduced. The relationship of Jon Snow and Ygritte is really sweet. I like how Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire sets up the romance after the drama. The way the romance will mean something to the audience. So Daenerys reached Young Kai. The name sounds like Chinese, but it's not. Then there's a ruler or a master. He's intimidated by the dragons. He's cowardly, which is a bit funny. Now I think Daenerys might be a bit too mean to strangers. The ending scene was really good. I really think the character of Jaime is getting better and better. So is Theon. Poor Theon. Now I actually kind of sympathize with Theon. But the ending, I wish it was more dramatic, because Jaime did something that was supposed to be thrilling and intense, but he did it in the most harmless way possible. I thought someone or something would die, but nope, everyone was still there, but nonetheless a decent episode. Moving on to episode 8, Second Sons. A really colorful episode, full of new and surprising endings, and interesting scenes. The relationship between Tyrion and Sansa is really awkward. Tyrion is drunk and dirty but smart. Sansa is weak but innocent. While Tyrion's relationship with Shae worsens, which doesn't sound good. Sam and Gilly continued their escape and was attacked. Although Sam rescued Gilly, but they're still in danger. Like they say, winter is coming. Daenerys met Daario Naharis, and Daario was loyal and was willing to fight for her. Still a polite and kind man. Really good. And what Melisandre did for Stannis is disturbing and gross, and I'm glad that Davos is standing beside Stannis again, because Davos is a good man. I like how in every plotline there's a character I really root for, like Davos, Jon Snow, Tyrion, Daenerys, Arya, Samwell, and Jaime. Then it's episode 9, The Reigns of Castamere. I mean, how do I even begin? I was like this for 15 minutes. So anyways, Daenerys wanted to take over Yunkai. Bran and Rickon still escaping, and Jojen and Bran was planning to meet the Three-Eyed Raven. Jon Snow was still in the Wildlings people. Arya and the Hound was leaving the Brotherhood together, and Robb, Talisa, and Catelyn and other Starks went to a wedding. Yep. This was the best episode I'd ever watched so far in my life at that point, but also the saddest episode. For some reason, it's slightly better than Face Off from Breaking Bad. I thought I was prepared for this one too, but no. But hey, at least Johnny Buckland of Coldplay made a cameo. And yes, spoiler alert. One of the scenes was Jorah, Grey Worm, and Daario taking down 100 guards while sacking the city of Yunkai by freeing all the slaves. That's pretty cool. And then there's another scene where Bran was really close to Jon Snow, but yeah, in terms of position, and Bran warged into Ghost and helped Jon Snow escape from the Wildlings. I think that's pretty cool too. Then the Wildlings realized that Jon Snow was still a crow, being an undercover, so they had a fight and it was intense. How brilliant can it be? And Arya and Robb was really close. While the Red Wedding was going down, Arya was right outside the twins. Until the Red Wedding happened, and it was pretty sad. The whole scene was just tension building up to a point of massacre and most brutal deaths ever in the show, at least so far. From the Freymen closing the door and the musicians starting to play The Reigns of Castamere, then Roose Bolton finding out that Catelyn was wearing an armor. Then we slowly know that the wedding might be a trap. Then suddenly a guy stabbed a pregnant Talisa to death. You're at least feeling bad for that. Then many arrows were shot and many Starks died. Many Tullys died. I was so shocked. Then Roose came out of nowhere and stabbed Robb to death. It was so painful to watch. Catelyn then screamed and cut, and then it was completely silent. It was really silent. So quiet. And Catelyn was there, and another guy just slit her throat. And then the end credits were completely silent. and so was I. I was like this. Like, it was no doubt one of the saddest thing I've ever watched. Then the final episode is Mhysa. Although it's not as tragic and dramatic as Season 1's finale, or it's not as beautifully fantasizing as Season 2's finale, this finale is by far the grandest and the most satisfying episode. Instead of opening a new chapter, it is a very, very end of a chapter. Most things have went back to where they were like on Season 1. Even if you count Season 1 to 3 as one chapter, this episode is the perfect ending to the chapter. Spoiler alert again. Yes, like I said, things have went back to where they were, like Jaime reuniting with Cersei. Gained more hair, lost a hand. It's an emotional scene. Theon was captured by Ramsay the whole time, and the person who wanted to save him is actually Yara, her sister. I thought Yara wouldn't do that, but she did, so family is good. Sam and Gilly met Bran, Hodor, Mira, and Jojen. Finally, there's a character-meet-character scene where they know each other, but have to leave each other on the same episode. We see Arya's violent side. I can't imagine how heartbreaking it is to witness your brother's and your mom's death without literally witnessing it. Then Arya just put emotion out of her way and stabbed a couple Frey soldiers to death. Such a badass. And the Hound was also okay when a kid kills a guy and he was like, next time you want to do this, tell me. The scene where Ygritte shot Jon Snow with arrows is really sad. They are supposed to be enemies, but they loved each other. And the last scene where all the Yunkish former slaves, raised Daenerys. It sent chills to me. And with that music, it looks like a really great happy ending to me. The finale is emotional and satisfying enough. We see how important a family is, and most things have gone back to square one. And I don't know why, but this time I paid attention to the logos beside the names in the title sequence, and I realized it is the big head, little head logo beside David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. Overall, this season is not as good as Season 1's, but better than Season 2. We finally realized that the Starks versus Lannisters beef is just a tip of the iceberg. There are way more to it. Daenerys is coming with dragons. White Walkers are coming too. And we learn more about the Tyrells and many more new characters. This season had weaved an even more complicated web of character relationships. And now I really want to know the plotline of the rest of the remaining Starks, including Jon Snow and Theon Greyjoy. Also, I want to point out how much this show focuses on these little details to show the differences between the culture, tradition, and lifestyle of Westeros highborn and lowborn. Bowl of brown, wolf bread, pork legs, carts, rivers of shit, flea bottom. Those are the poor people. And then we have the rich people, which have cheese, lemon cake, shaving, bathing, handmaidens, lands, and titles. This season's really differentiate the lowborn between the lowborn and the highborn. The show successfully immerses its viewers into the world of Westeros and Essos, mixing things from the medieval age and fantasy, like blood magic, dragons, and warlocks. This season is also even more bold and daring, and I can see that the writers always want to grapple onto a plotline every episode, and focus on it for a while for better entertainment. The worst episode is episode 2, Dark Wings, Dark Words, and the best is, sadly, episode 9, The Reigns of Castamere. At last, I'm saying this season is still mind-blowing, and especially the 9th episode. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. So, have you watched Game of Thrones Season 3? From 1 to 10, how much would you rate it? Like if you like, and subscribe if you want more. And at the next wedding, I'm gonna find a tree to piss.